Welcome, everyone, to the Oxfam America Action Fund's Day of Action to Get Out the Vote. We are so excited to be hosting this Day of Action and to have everyone tuning in with us here today. My name is Maia Peters, and I'm with Oxfam America Action Fund, and I'll be your host for today's rally. Oxfam America Action Fund is a C4 organization that works alongside Oxfam to support the shared mission to end the injustice of poverty. As a part of this work, Oxfam America Action Fund is mobilizing Americans all across the country to get out the vote and take action and learn about crucial issues in this election. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown us that many of the challenges that we face here in the US are the same challenges that people face all around the world. From racism to economic inequality, climate change, gender discrimination, global pandemics, there's so much at stake in this election. So now is the time that we all get together, take action, and make change at this pivotal point in our history. So as we dive into today, I want everyone to take a moment to ask themselves, what are the issues that you're most passionate about and the issues that are driving you to take action today and every day? For me personally, that would be racial and gender inequality. This election, as I'm sure we all know, is a crossroads of sorts for our country. So for the next hour, we'll hear from so many inspiring speakers as to how these issues will show up in the election, why they're taking action, and why you should get involved and get out the vote in your communities. Our first guest for today will kick us off with a conversation about the intersection between racial and gender inequality and how voting and political representation can begin to tackle these issues. So please join me in welcoming Ashanti Golar and Samira Siddiqui. Ashanti Golar is the president of Emerge America, which is a powerful political organization that is dedicated to training Democratic women to run for office and win. She's also the co-host and founder of the Brown Girls Guide to Politics podcast, and last year was named one of She the People's 20 Women of Color in Politics to Watch in 2020. She's also an Oxfam Sisters on the Planet ambassador, along with hundreds of other influential women leaders in the US who advocate for women all around the world. Samira Siddiqui is a senior advocacy advisor at Oxfam America, where she leads the Racial Justice Ally Advocacy Team. As an advocate for racial justice in and out of the workplace, Samira is one of the key voices in Oxfam America's anti-racist journey. So please join me in welcoming them both to the stream.
Hi, thank you, Maia. And good morning or good afternoon, Ashanti.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Okay, so we're in the same time zone.
Yes.
Well, I want to welcome everyone who's tuned in, and I especially want to thank you, Ashanti, for joining me. I'm excited to be able to have the first conversation of the hour with you, because I think what we're going to get into, right? We're going to talk about your organization Emerge and your podcast, but what it's going to allow us to do is talk about the issues that are at the heart of this election, right? Which is about the dignity of women, fighting for the dignity of women. We're going to talk about racism, and we're going to talk about political representation for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So we're going to get into all of that. But before we do that, I really want to center on your story, right? Before we get into your political career that you have, before you even came to Emerge, talk to us, bring us back to what got you started on this path, right? What is at the root of your activism and your commitment to politics?
So me being here at Emerge during the Brown Girls Guide, it comes from the fact early on I didn't see a lot of representation of women and people of color in politics. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to tell people I did not come from a political family at all. One day my mom got up from the couch. I changed the TV to something that I want to watch, and I found C-SPAN. And I saw all of these people who were arguing and fighting about making our country better. And I knew I loved this thing that I saw. But I immediately thought, is this thing for me? Because I didn't see a lot of women. I didn't see a lot of people of color. And my love for politics continued. I learned more about politics. And I had a great government teacher who encouraged us to get involved with volunteering. She had voter registration forms for your 18th birthday to register you to vote. And I continued to get more involved when I was in college as a young adult. And I had a lot of women who saw things in me that I didn't see in myself. And they lifted me up. They encouraged me. When Emerge was looking to start in Nevada, I was the president of the Young Democrats of Nevada at the time, and they reached out to me about getting involved. So I'm a co-founder of Emerge Nevada. And the Brown Girls Guide to Politics comes out of the fact that because I didn't see a lot of people who look like me, because I didn't automatically have that mentorship, I wanted to create a resource, a platform that was accessible to other Black, Brown, and Indigenous women to let them know, yes, you do belong in this space of politics. Yes, you can influence politics, and that it's time for us to not only take our seats at the table, but it's time for us to shake the table.
Right. That's powerful. And so in talking about your own personal journey, you talked about the importance of mentorship, and that's essentially what your organization Emerge does, right? You recruit and then you train women, right? And you're training women to step into their power, right? And then they go into elected office.
Yeah.
So talk more about that, right? Training women to step into their power and then into politics.
We have to look at the full picture. We have 520,000 elected offices in this country. Women were 51% of the population. We do not occupy 51% of those offices. Men occupy around 75%. So when we're talking about equality, a representative democracy, an inclusive democracy, that means that we need more women and Black, Brown, Indigenous people at the table. And women and Black, Brown, and Indigenous people are not the people who are recruited to run for office. People say, look at your network whenever you're looking to get involved in anything. And that includes politics. People go through their phone. Who did they go to college with? Who's the big wig at a law firm? And those are the people who are recruited to run. Right. And we know at Emerge that there are everyday women in their communities who are doing the work that need to be the ones in these seats of power. It's taking the woman who's the head of the PTA and putting her on the school board. It's taking the woman who volunteers for everyone's campaign and telling her it's her time to put her name on the ballot. Taking a woman who is at every city council meeting and knows the issues like the back of her hand and moving her from that audience to the dais. And we've been extremely successful. We trained 4,000 women to run for office. Almost 740 are currently serving in office. And despite everything this year, we have over 700 women on the ballot. And I'm just inspired by these women every day. They are what keeps me going during this time, and they bring me joy.
That's incredible. That is an incredible accomplishment. So when you look at your work, so at Emerge, you're training women, you're giving them the tools they need, you're expanding, making that network, right? That network that you talked about that is so critical for recruitment. You're also building other infrastructure to support women, right? And especially when it comes to political commentary. So I want to get into your podcast, and I'm going to say it because I know you may not say it, but your podcast, The Brown Girls Guide to Politics, was just named by Time to be one of the essential podcasts to listen to make sense of 2020 elections, right? And to be clear, it's not to make sense of 2020, because ain't nothing out there going to help us do that, but it's about the elections. This is incredible, right? So congratulations to you. And just talk about what inspired you to go to that next step to create this podcast, and what did we not see in political commentary that your podcast offers for us?
What inspired the podcast is on the Brown Girls Guide blog, we did a series called Being the Only Brown Girl in the Room, and talking about what it's like being in these political spaces, even in 2018, 2019, 2020, you're still the only woman, you're still the only person of color, and you got to hold it down. And it is hard. It is not always sunshine, rainbows, and lollipops. And when we did that blog, so many of our supporters reached out saying, I want to hear more of these stories because we don't hear this. Yep. We don't get that realness. And that was the catalyst for the podcast, to air those stories, the real behind the scenes that you don't see about what it's like being a woman of color in politics. We celebrate the successes, but we also talk about my Oxfam sister, Kaya Morris, when she gave up her seat in the state house because of the racism her and her family we're facing. So I consider just the BGG, the podcast, is my love letter to other Black, brown, and Indigenous women. And it is all about uplifting their voices, because still in 2020, we have to have something for us and by us to hear those stories.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I can attest, it's a great podcast. I encourage everyone who's listening to go check it out. We have a few minutes left, and I want to get in a little deeper, right? And I want to get a little serious. What we're facing right now is a high stakes election, right? We are facing a global pandemic with the highest rates here in the US and growing. We have growing inequality, and we're seeing rampant racism. We know what's at stake, but what can you drill down? What's at stake for Black women in particular if we're not holding office, right? What does it do to the political imagination of this country when Black women, Indigenous, women of color are in office?
Yeah. We gotta be honest, Samira. We just celebrated the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, but that only gave the right to vote to some women.
Mm-hmm.
It did not include the women that look like us.
Right.
So it has not been 100 years for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
So we see more Black, brown, Indigenous women running because it wasn't only until 1965 and after that we had the right to full political participation. When we don't have us at the table, you don't get that lived experience. And
Mm-hmm.
that is everything that makes it different. So when you think about the rooms that you are in your community, and you don't see those people holding elected office, that means that your issues are not being represented. They are
Mm-hmm.
not there at all. We are in the middle of two pandemics, like I like to say, a health pandemic with COVID and a racial injustice pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And if we want to make sure that we are providing better quality healthcare to fight the pandemic, if we want to make sure that we are changing criminal justice reform, that means that you need the voices, the lived experiences of Black women, Black, brown, Indigenous women at the table.
That's right. That's so powerful. And even at Oxfam, that's a principle we go by, right? Those who are affected, they're the ones that should be offering the policy solution. So a lot of parallels there. That's why you're a sister with us. We have about 2 minutes left, and I want you to sort of bring it home for us, right? So political representation is important, right? And we know that all of us we're going to be marching to the polls, and we're going to go to the polls, right? But tell us, what do we need to do beyond that, right? So after we go to the polls, where do we go next?
We have to make people know that voting isn't just an event, it's a lifestyle. Political involvement, it needs to be a lifestyle. There's an entire political ecosystem. There's the candidates, there's the campaign staff, there's the volunteers and the activists. And we need to make sure that we are on this 365 days a year. We are in the middle of great change in our country. And change is hard, change is difficult, change is uncomfortable. But the only reason you and I are able to sit here, Samira, is because of people who made that change. Mm-hmm. And we have to realize it's our involvement that is going to continue that change and make it better for the other people coming before us. And it's no longer just about us caring about the issue that's on the ballot or making sure we just get the right people in office. We need to make sure we are reimagining
That's right.
what politics looks like in this country. We have to reimagine healthcare. We have to reimagine criminal justice reform. We have to reimagine education. And that only happens when we're voting, we're politically engaged, and we're recruiting the people that look like us to represent us. And I have to also end by saying, when it comes to racism and racial injustice, these are not just Black and brown issues. These are not just women issues. Everyone needs to care about these issues because it will impact you in some way.
That's right. We are fighting for everyone. Thank you so much, Ashanti. Our time is over. Thank you so much. We could continue, but our time is over. Thank you, Ashanti.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Back to you, Maya.
Thank you both so much for joining us and for sharing such a timely and crucial conversation. I love your last message, Ashanti, about voting being a part of a political lifestyle, and that voting isn't all that you need to do. You need to continue it, past election day. And that's something that is definitely going to stick with me and a message that I'll share with my family and friends moving forward. I hope everyone else took away something powerful from that conversation, especially around the power of representation and the power of people that all of us everyday people have to fight for justice and create lasting systemic change. So another issue that is becoming more and more important, or more and more urgent, and is imperative to the conversation on lasting change is climate. So here to add their voices to the chorus calling for climate justice are Bridget and McDuck from Lake Street Dive.
Hi everyone, Bridget and McDuck here from Lake Street Dive. As you know, the election is very quickly approaching and we all have a role to play in the fight for justice. Voting is a great way to make sure our voices are heard and to make sure key issues like climate change and migration are addressed by our leaders.
Our changing climate is causing increasingly devastating, deadly, extreme, and unpredictable weather events that are forcing people around the world to seek refuge. It's more important than ever that we don't turn our backs on those in need and do everything we can to address this. We must elect leaders who will fight for us and alongside us in the effort to save our planet and protect vulnerable populations, which is why I'm joining the Oxfam America Action Fund in their effort to get out the vote and create change this election season and beyond. Why you should too.
Now we're going to share with you a video for our new song, Making Do. This is a song that is about the world that future generations will inherit and our responsibility to address it and our role in it. Hopefully, this song can act as a rallying cry to do the best that you can with what you have. Thank you.
Keep up the good work, and let's fight for our future.
Generation, Merry Christmas. You're working harder than ever now, and the coffee sucks. You know, Colombia and Kenya got too damn hot, and now you're making do with what you've got. Everybody knew, reading all the same headlines, blowing through the traffic signs, looking for the cops. But
I love that video and the message that it sends. I really like the sentiment that as long as we keep up the work that we're doing, and we're all doing the best that we can, so that's okay. It reminds me also how all of these issues are deeply connected and impact us all in ways that we may not even realize. And with that, I do want to remind everyone that if you haven't already, please sign up for a shift so that we can keep on par with the message in that video and keep doing the best we can to make change. Next up, we will hear from two other special guests, Reverend Michael Malcolm and Jesse Young, about how issues related to the impact of the climate crisis show up in the election. Reverend Michael Malcolm is the founder of the People's Justice Council and executive director of Alabama Interfaith Power and Light. A licensed and ordained United Church of Christ minister and environmental justice minister of the Southeast Conference of the United Church of Christ, he describes himself as a servant of the people seeking to create a just world. Jesse Young is a climate policy lead at Oxfam America, where he focuses on global multilateral engagement on climate issues and defense of the Paris Agreement. He previously served as a senior advisor in the Office of the Special Envoy for Climate Change at the U.S. State Department, and prior to that spent several years as a senior policy advisor to U.S. Senator Chris Murphy, where he worked on environment, energy, and transportation issues. Welcome, Jesse and Reverend Malcolm. We are so excited to have you here.
Reverend, how's it going?
All is well. How are you, Jesse?
All things considered, I'm doing pretty well. So
good.
Thanks for taking the time to do this. I'm curious if you've had the same experience, but having been in this movement for a couple of years like I have, I think the environmental movement spent a long time talking about things like polar bears and ecological integrity and the polar ice caps. And those are great things and those are super important things, but they don't focus on the actual people-centered impacts of climate change. And that's what undergirds the movement for climate justice in this country. I'm curious, what brought you to this movement and how do you think about the impact that climate change is actually having on people's lives around the world that you've seen and in your community personally?
Yeah, so as a former pastor of a church and a current UCC minister or United Church of Christ minister, I had the opportunity to be mentored by Reverend Dr. Gerald Durley. And one of the things that he's often said, and the thing that strikes me the most, is he said, how can I preach to them in the pulpit, shout them in the pews, but they can't breathe out in public? And that in itself led me to a call to put my theology and all of my other training to actually ministering to people who were out in the streets. And those who are out in community and really fighting for the life that they needed or deserved as human beings, and ensuring that we saw them.
So you have sort of a really interesting perspective because you come from a community of faith, you work and practice in Alabama, but you also traveled a lot of the country talking about these issues. And I believe you've also spent some time when you were training to be a pastor in the medical system. So you have sort of a unique perspective on the many crises of COVID, racial justice, climate injustice. What is your perspective on this really crazy moment in our history in terms of your activism and faith?
Yeah, so what I found out in all of my training, as well as my experience, and I can't substitute that and ignore that, but my experience as a Black man, I've experienced oppression on many levels. And I can also identify with a George Floyd who said he couldn't breathe, as well as an Eric Garner who said he couldn't breathe. And working in the medical field, you could see those who suffer from asthma and those who suffer from other respiratory diseases and those who suffer from other pulmonary diseases who have the same skin color as I do. Mm-hmm. And those my brown brothers and sisters and my indigenous brothers and sisters who live in communities that are polluted and live in communities that are under stress because of economic oppression. I can identify with that from a personal level, but also knowing my training, I knew that I could put that to use, not just as a pastor, but as a trained chaplain, not just as a trained chaplain, but as a professional and having a master's of business administration and working in industry. So I was able to use all of those to inform me of the language that has so often been put away from community and unjustly out of reach of community in these spaces.
That makes complete sense. I wonder, keying off of that, I think, at least in my personal experience working on climate change, it's sometimes hard to find a hopeful message to point people in the right direction, because this stuff can be very heavy, especially with the COVID crisis and racial injustice, all these things we've been talking about. What have you seen personally that inspires you, that keeps you going, that makes you think there's a future for this movement and we can do good and make things better?
You know, Jesse, that question in itself just delights me. And here's why it delights me. It's because it speaks to a resiliency of humanity to always fight to be community. And in these moments, we are fighting to be community. And you can see people from all walks of life and all hues and all ethnicities fighting right now to be community. And yes, we do have that minority of people who are obstructing that. And yes, they do sit in powerful positions. But I've always understood it from not just a social aspect, but even from a faith aspect, that they may have political power, they may even have economical power, but they don't have people power. We have people power, and the people are fighting right now to see justice. The people are fighting right now to see equity. And the thing that's distracting us is that small minority of people who are making so much noise. And we know the squeaky wheel always gets the most grease. That's why it's so important for us right now to go out in masses and vote, because that's our way of making the most noise, our way of letting our voices be heard to shape what we really want our society to be. And we can take what we're saying out in the streets and we can take them to the polls, and we can truly make difference from a policy level.
Well, I'm not going to improve on that. That was really fabulous. Thank you so much, Reverend Malcolm. Thank you for all your service and activism, and thank you for keeping the faith in the fight.
Thank you.
Oh, Maya, I think you're muted.
Thank you both so much for joining us, and thank you, Reverend Malcolm, for sharing that message. It was so great to hear about all the incredible work you've been doing in the Gulf Coast, and I like the inspiring note that you ended on, because like Jesse said, sometimes when we talk about climate, we focus on all of the negative, but it was really refreshing to hear about all of the ways that the communities that you work in are working to rebuild and are creating people power, like you said.
Thank you. Thank you. Bless you all. Thank you for having me.
So next up, we will hear some special messages from actor Luke Baines and entrepreneur and model Amita Lagoon.
I'm Luke Baines, and I'm teaming up with Oxfam America for their Dignity for All campaign, encouraging people to vote in the next US election November 3rd. In 2016, 40% of eligible voters didn't vote. I myself live in the US, but I am not a US citizen. I pay taxes here, but I cannot have a say in how the government forms and who represents us. You can. If you care about things like immigration, migration, climate change, gender and racial equality, please text Luke to 97779, and Oxfam will send you more information on how you can register to vote and how you can remind your friends to register and get them to vote. Thank you.
Okay, so for those who are able, for those who are privileged enough to be able to vote in the US, I hope that you use this privilege to vote, because I cannot vote in the US. So I'm asking you to please use your vote, use your voice and vote. Vote for dignity, vote for compassion, vote for healthcare, vote for education, vote for equality, vote for just basic human rights, vote for a livable planet, because I know that your vote will make a difference. So thank you.
Thanks, Luke and Amito, for your encouraging words and the reminder that it is important to vote this year, along with all of the other ways that we're going to be taking action today, because there is so much at stake, like Amito said in her message. When I think about all of the people who will be impacted by the outcome of this election, which is, of course, everyone, refugees and migrants are at the top of that list. So next we will hear from Tao Wen and Isra Shaker about why we must stand up for the shared humanity in us all and not pit ourselves against one another or blame the most vulnerable among us. Tao Wen is a singer-songwriter from the Bay Area and longtime Oxfam supporter and Sisters on the Planet ambassador. Born in Virginia to Vietnamese refugees, Tao's music has been described as intensely personal and exhilaratingly unique. She has tirelessly advocated for the rights of refugees, female prisoners, literacy, and other important causes. Tao also recently released her 8th album called Temple, which is one of the best reviewed albums of the year. Isra Shaker is an activist and senior advisor at Oxfam America, where she leads the Migration and Protection Campaign and co-leads Oxfam America's voter access work. As a Syrian American, Isra often speaks about her experience living apart from her family and fighting for the rights of migrants and refugees all around the world. Welcome, Tao and Isra.
Hi, Cal.
Hi, Isra. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am doing well. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. I'm so happy to be connected in this with you. I want to go ahead and start a little bit of I don't know if or maybe yours. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Perfect.
Okay. So tell us more about what it was like growing up as a refugee in your particular community.
Sure. I grew up. I was born and raised in Virginia, and both my parents had fled the war in Vietnam because they both were involved. My dad was in the Air Force for the South Vietnamese, and my mom worked for the South Vietnamese State Department, the embassy, and so both was imperative that they seek refuge, and were able to resettle in America. And growing up, I didn't, there was such a stigma for a really long time around just within the community and also on a broader scale. I never identified as the daughter of refugees until very recently. And I never heard my family identify themselves as refugees, even though that's what they are. But because there was such I suppose the images and the rhetoric it invoked was something they didn't want to be associated with, which is, you can see the ongoing, how that resonates today within immigration and refugee policy, the U.S. approach to it.
And that's so powerful. And I'm just thinking to myself that, also for me personally, like I have family members who have lived through the Syrian conflict and, are in different parts of the world, members who are refugees. And it is an interesting concept of like all of a sudden your identity shifting and you have to handle that label that's put on you because of situations and conditions that aren't in your control. And I resonate with a lot of what you're saying where, a lot of times like you don't even know that you have to own that identity because it's just something that was placed on you. So that's really powerful. And I appreciate you sharing that. We heard in your bio a little bit that you're really passionate about the treatment of women in particular who are incarcerated and camps, and specifically in places that aren't deemed as home. Can you talk a little bit more about why you're so passionate about that and the work that you've done with the California Coalition of Women Prisoners?
Certainly, yeah. And it wasn't till I started, very good friends of mine are incredible organizers in the Bay in Southern California, and they're my connection to CCWP and working with incarcerated people. And I didn't know until I started. It was years ago that I started doing more regular visits, advocacy visits, and I realized that so many people who are incarcerated, and so many of the women that I met were there. They were survivors of domestic violence, and they were there for having defended themselves. They were there as having been accessories to a crime committed by a partner, a boyfriend or a husband, and there were other. So my connection was that I grew up in a very turbulent home, and it just reminded me so much of what I had seen my mom endure, and other women in the family in our community, and it's only recently that I've been tying it all together and understanding that this is a more specific thread. But if I was raised in a world where my father was sort of emasculated as a refugee within, so in the outside world, when the men in my family and community were emasculated in such a way, or dehumanized in such a way, that doesn't stop there. It comes into the home. There are sort of ever resonating consequences of the dehumanization of people.
Yeah, and there's a ripple that continues to generations of families for like you said, for many, many years. And so I think that's so powerful, because a lot of times we talk about refugees as almost not human beings, as not people with lived experiences, who have faced so much trauma, who are forced to flee persecution, violence, war, whatever it may be, just for the sake of safe haven. And, as a country, we need to be welcoming them. And so on that point, in the context of this election, what do you think are the main migration refugee related issues at stake in this election?
I mean, I think what's at stake in a more general sense is our ability to be morally sound. I think it's a deep existential question now. What, as Americans, are we willing to accept accept actions being committed in our name? What are we willing to show of our humanity, and to say that if we as a country don't accept the responsibility of destabilizing so many countries, so many economies, so many environments, if we're not willing to accept that responsibility, and in turn demand that people prove their worth and humanity, what does that do to our own humanity? You're going to degrade your goodness, the idea of being good, the idea of what we believe ourselves to be, which is a generous country, which are generous people with consciences.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you said you're talking about our values and how important it is to vote with your values, especially this election. And remember, right, that your vote is bigger than just a ballot, right, that you're casting. It is what you stand for. It is, what you believe in, the country that you're envisioning. And so with that, what do you hope, or how do you hope 2021 will look like?
As you can tell, I'm beyond I hope. I mean, I I feel like we are in an extreme triage situation. I totally believe in the vote. I totally believe in getting out the vote. I think that is the bare minimum that anyone who's privileged enough to vote in this country, that's the bare minimum. And then how else do we show up? It doesn't stop there. And it's not just this election, it's at the local level. What do I hope to see? That we have hit rock bottom and that we are coming back, and that we follow leaders such as yourself. We follow and honor the passion and the compassion demonstrated by true leaders that have been inspiring us on such a different level, on a very visceral level, in the recent months with the uprisings. Something that this nation hasn't felt in so long, which I'm really happy and proud of, and that we don't waste it, and we don't take it for granted.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Tao. Wow, so beautiful. And your music is beautiful, and your spirit, your energy, so gracious. Thank you so much, Tao, for joining us today. And we're so lucky to have you as part of the Ox family. And we're just so grateful for your contributions every single day to not just Oxfam, but to the world around you and around us. Please, if you want to take action, really inspired by the words of Tao, make sure that you sign up for a shift to get out the vote and really do everything you said, like Tao mentioned, to get out the vote and do everything we can to make a difference this election. Thanks so much, Tao. It was an honor, and I hope to see you again soon. Take it away, Davida.
Thank you both so much for joining us today. That was such a beautiful and inspiring conversation. And just hearing both of your personal stories is always so moving. It was for me, and I'm sure it was for our audience as well. And thank you for sharing that last CTA to vote. Voting is definitely a piece in the puzzle, but to keep taking action beyond voting so that we can ensure that the US is a welcoming home for all of us. So many refugees do go on to become American citizens after years of hard work and living in the US, some of whom will be voting for the first time in this year's election. One new citizen in particular who will be voting for the first time this year is our next guest, actor and activist Sean McGuire, who is here to share why it's so important to exercise your right to vote.
Hi, my name's Sean McGuire, and I have been working with Oxfam for quite some time, and I recently became a citizen. In fact, just on Tuesday. And it was a big deal for me and my wife, because I've been living in this country for 20 years and I love it very much. And to actually say that I am now a citizen was a warm and strange feeling, certainly given the times that we live in. But 1 hour after we had received our certificate that said that we are officially Americans, we had registered to vote. And whilst it felt good to become a citizen, it felt even better to know that I could actively be part of this democracy, and that my wife and I could put our vote in so that we can suggest who we think is going to be the best leader of the country. And the fact that every single person above the age of 18 that is registered can go and do this is why we have a democracy, why we have a for the people, by the people. It's so important to vote. So many people sacrificed so much. People of colour, women, literally gave up their lives, some of them, so that we could have this right, so that we could actually be part of a working democracy and we could make our voices heard. So even if you think it's boring, even if you think your voice won't be heard, trust me, it will. They all count. It really counts, and it counts this year more than ever. So if you are not registered to vote, if you know anybody over the age of 18 that is legal to register and haven't, please remind them of this importance, that they can actively be part of this democracy. And then when it's done, you know at least that you heard your voice heard. Thank you. Go vote.
Hearing about how much that means to Sean as a new citizen really puts things in perspective. While voting is a fundamental right, not everyone who lives in the US or even is a US citizen has the ability or access to exercise that right. So we really all should be making sure that we are valuing this right, that we are taking it seriously, and that we're taking advantage of such an important opportunity and responsibility. Our next speaker will talk about how we can do just that and make sure that our friends and family and everyone else does too. Priestley Johnson is the Deputy Director of Partnership Outreach and Engagement at When We All Vote. She's responsible for their partnership program and getting voter registration resources out to partners all across the nation. Priestley is a passionate advocate and relationship builder using her skill set of strategic partnerships, project management, business development, and event planning to move the needle. Welcome, Priestley. We are so happy to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Maya. It is really a pleasure, and I love all of the important work that Oxfam is doing. Priestley Johnson here, Deputy Director of Partnerships at When We All Vote, and I'm here to get you everything that you're going to need in order to get ready and register to vote this election season. We are now in election day. October is election month, and we have to get ready for it. So a little bit more about When We All Vote is that we are on a mission to change the culture around voting by increasing voter participation in each and every election. Here is the reality. In 2016, 100 million eligible voters in this country did not vote. Right now, even in this critical election year, 1/5 of eligible Americans are still not even registered to vote. We also know that during the midterm election in 2018, even with the largest turnout of youth in a midterm election in decades, 2/3 of young people still did not vote. We are going to be looking for your leadership. Yes, you on the other side of the screen, we're looking for your leadership to ensure that all people have their voices heard in the upcoming election, especially on November 3rd, but especially during the month of October. Your vote and your voice matters. One thing for sure that When We All Vote is trying to do is to encourage you to be an October voter. And we want you to become an October voter because we want you to cast your ballot early. And there's so many options that you can do to make sure that your ballot is turned in the month of October. One thing you can do is right now, the first step in becoming an October voter is to get registered to vote. The link on the bottom of the screen is how you can get registered to vote. After you register to vote, if you are deciding to cast your ballot or request your ballot almost immediately right now so that you can get your ballot by this month of October. When you get your ballot, you have so many options on ways you can submit it. Number one, you can return it by mail. Number two, you can find a drop box, and a lot of places have drive-in drop boxes that you can put your ballot in. Another way that you can do is you can actually go in person and turn it in to any polling locations and they will accept it. There's another option also on how you can become an October voter. You can actually go in person in 40 of our states and vote early. The same way you would vote early the same way you would vote, you would go to vote on November 3rd, maybe stand in a line, wait there, go into a booth, pick your people. You can vote early the same way, minus the line in 40 of our states. So go ahead and go to whenweallvote.org and look into the people that you are trying to look into your ballot, look into where you can turn it in, and make sure you are getting prepared. October is not only for Halloween, October is for you to become an October voter so that on November 3rd, you can wait at home with all the rest of us and enjoy Election Day the same way that we are. There's so many really great ways for you to take action. And here are 4 quick tips, especially about vote by mail, that you should know. One is that absentee voting is almost the same thing as voting by mail. So just let's debunk that myth, and so that you can totally get that. Another thing is that a lot of states are allowing you to do same-day voter registration. So right now, go to Google. Just Google is like the easiest thing. And you can just Google when your state's voter registration deadline is. But a lot of people, they love Google, but you can also go to whenweallvote.org/deadlines to figure out your deadline for your state. And some of them are ever changing. They're moving. So pay attention. Be an October voter. Another thing is that a lot of states are allowing you to drop off your ballot and drive through drop boxes or walking it into polling locations, or even 40 states, over 40 states allow you to go in person and vote early. So be an October voter, grab another person to go with you, and send a picture to whenweallvote.org and tag us in your picture and have fun at the polls. This is going to be a very interesting year, but it also can be a very fun year where we ensure that all Americans have their voices heard. So with that, I just want to say thank you again for all of your efforts at Oxfam. But each of you are going to be the change that we are going to hope to see, and we are going to look forward to having your voice heard at the upcoming election. I look forward to seeing you guys at the polls. Bye, and back to Maya. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Priestley. It's always so great to hear what our partners are doing and all the amazing work that they're doing these days. If you want more information about how to become an October voter or how to get registered to vote, be sure to check out the When We All Vote resources, which will be shared in the comments. Our final guest for today hails from the heart of Appalachia. Ben Sollee is a cellist and singer-songwriter. He has composed for major motion pictures, ballets, and some of TV's biggest shows. He's given TED Talks and lectures on sustainability issues and has done complete concert tours, traveling from show to show, completely carbon-free with his cello strapped to his bicycle, which I think is just insane and amazing. A tireless campaigner for environmental rights and against mountaintop mining in his beloved state of Kentucky. Here to perform for us live from Louisville, please welcome Ben Sollee.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm Ben. I'm live in my studio here in Louisville, Kentucky, and I'm going to play a song. It's a cover by an artist named Sam Cooke, who many of you all know. He's an incredible vocalist. In his own way, he moved the needle on racial justice in his time. And, while I'm a white dude in Kentucky, I'm not going to know how a black man felt in the 60s. But I really, really love the optimism that he expressed in this song about the human potential, about human spirit, and about how just knowing that a change will come. We have to hold on to that. We have to hold on to the ambition. We have to hold on to the hunger and the hope behind that. That change will come. It's the only thing that's consistent. And the way that change comes about and the direction that it takes is really, here in America, up to all of us. And here in Kentucky, we've got some dense urban areas and then a lot of rural areas. And in those hills and hollers, there's a lot of conversations. And we really need to do a lot of outreach and listening. I think listening is so important to be able to bring about more togetherness. So you've already heard a lot of encouraging for you to get out the vote. It's also so important for you to get your family and friends out to vote. And so this song is really meant to inspire you, charge you up, and know that a change is going to come. Thanks so much. Well, it's dark in the city. Oh, I've lost my pride. The lights in the streets, how the stars surmise. It's been a long time coming, but I know, yes I know, change is gonna come. Ooh. And it's too hard living, oh, and I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there just beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know, yes I know, change is gonna come. Just making sure this text is right from Bob. audio's fixed. Oh, and I miss my family. Oh, my little girl. Yes, she is my princess. I'd give her the world. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know, yes, I know, change is gonna come. I just need some comfort, oh, some kind of belief that this war we're fighting, oh, can really bring some peace. There's no rhyme, no reason, oh, no sweet melody. Oh, more and more weapons mean less security. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know, yes, I know, change is gonna come. And I'm trying to find it, oh, some better place. We're having the biggest gun, ain't some kind of race. It's been a long, oh, long time coming, but I know, yes, I know, change is gonna come. But there've been times I've thought I couldn't last for long, but now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know, yes, I know, change is gonna come. Yes, it's been a long, long time coming, but I know, yes, I know, change is gonna come. Yeah, change is gonna come. Get out the vote, you all, for yourselves, for your friends, for your family, for the nation. Take care.
Thanks for such an incredible performance, Ben.
Oh, good. I hope the audio worked for you all. I saw a text
Yeah.
from Bob Ferguson. Worked good?
It was great.
Good.
Before you go, I have one question.
Yeah.
Do you really bike around with your cello?
Yeah. So I have a Surly Big Dummy, which is a kind of on the extra cycle platform. It's a utility cycle. And
Okay.
strap the cello on the side of it and do music tours. Over the last 5-6 years, we've done music tours around the country, about 6,000 miles of touring. And the idea was to slow down. And really
Wow.
kind of take in and be inspired, and just be present.
That's incredible. I can barely even bike with like a water bottle, so I can't imagine biking with a cello. That's amazing.
That's what's amazing about the human body, is that it will adjust to whatever it needs to do.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sure everyone loved that song as much as I did.
I hope so, and I hope it inspires them to get out there and get their friends voting.
So that is about it for our show today. I want to thank all of our guests today. It was such an amazing experience, and we really couldn't have done it without them. I hope everyone enjoyed hearing from them as much as I did, and ultimately that everyone feels sort of energized and ready to go get out the vote this afternoon and throughout the rest of the month of October. I also want to give a huge thank you to our amazing supporters, both old and new, for tuning into our stream today. It means so much to us here at Oxfam America Action Fund to have such a passionate supporter base who continues to advocate for these issues alongside us every single day. It's so important that we all keep up this energy and momentum, and that we remember that change starts right here, right now, with all of us. So we must make sure that we're doing everything we can and that we're continuing to take action today, every day, for the rest of the year and into next year as much as we can. Because this is such an important time for our country. We really are at a crossroads, and we really do have the power to make lasting change. So with that, if you haven't already, sign up for a shift to get out the vote and take action today and throughout the rest of this month. You can follow the link in the little overlay or go to the Oxfam America Action Fund action page and Mobilize America. The link for that will also be posted in the comments. And thank you so much. Continue fighting and keep up the good work.